Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to the Beyond Wellness Radio podcast. Feel free and head over to justinhealth.com. We have all of our podcast transcriptions there, as well as video series on different health topics ranging from thyroid to hormones, ketogenic diets, and gluten. While you're there, you can also schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or our colleagues and staff to help dive into any pressing health issues you really want to get to the root cause on. Again, if you enjoy the podcast, feel free and share the information with friends or family, and enjoy the show. And we are live. It's Dr. J here in the house with Evan Brand. Today, we're going to be talking about the gut-lung connection. This is really important. Lung health today is very important. We have to get good oxygenation. We have to make sure inflammation from different microbes in the environment, whether it's allergens or infections, we have to make sure that we're able to still breathe and transfer oxygen, even with those stressors in the environment. We're going to talk about how the gut is connected to that and how inflammation in the gut can be bidirectional and can affect the lungs as well. So let's dive in. Evan, how are we doing today, man?
Hey, doing really well. Starting this thing off, I was looking at some papers this morning. I told you this was just too important for us not to cover. So in the Journal of Immunology from this year, 2021, I'm just going to read you one really big thing here, which is the fact that intestinal dysbiosis is associated with increased mortality in respiratory infections due to an exacerbated inflammation and decreased regulatory or anti-inflammatory mechanisms in the lungs and the gut. And they say here, pointing to this important relationship. So this was actually the first time I've heard, you and I've been talking about stuff for years. I mean, we've done between us both close to 1,000 podcasts, and we've been talking about the gut brain axis. We've talked about the gut thyroid axis. We've talked about the gut skin axis, but I don't think we've ever hit on the gut lung axis. And so this paper is just really reviewing the literature on this, and it's absolutely incredible because guess what? The beneficial bacteria helps respiratory infections, and there's 30 pages, if not more. I haven't even had a chance to review all the papers on this, but there are countless papers now and pages of papers showing that the probiotics actually can reduce the inflammation in the lungs. However, if you're in the hospital or if you were in the unfortunate situation of being in a critical care unit, an ICU, you're going to be getting antibiotics more than likely, and you're not going to be getting probiotics. And we could go into the mechanisms, but I think the mechanisms will probably bore people. But long story short, there's an increase in natural killer cells and obviously decreases in inflammatory cytokines. And there's many other mechanisms. But long story short, probiotics are absolutely amazing. And we know that the antibiotics that you're going to get in these situations are going to do the exact opposite.
Absolutely. Here's a great study here. I know we're kind of referring off some of it. I'm going to share my screen here with the audience. Everyone can see it. All right. Let me know if you guys can see this here. I'm going to pull this up here so you guys can see it. All right. Can you see my screen there? All right. Awesome. All right. So off the bat, right, one of the key driving factors of lung inflammation is going to be dysbiosis, right? Why is this? A lot of this has to do with the fact that bacteria, 80% of the immune system's in the intestinal tract, right? You have some in the GALT, which is going to be the gastric associated lymphoid tissue that's in the stomach right here. And then you have the MALT, which is the mucosal associated lymphoid tissue. So the mucosal, that'd be the intestine. So the small intestine's in the middle here, and then the peripheral on the outside is the large intestine. And so a couple of the big things that you're going to see is when the immune system is overactive, one of the first things the immune system does when it's overactive is it actually creates inflammation, right? Part of inflammation is vasodilation, so it can bring the immune system, the immune cells there to help fight it off. Think if you get bumped in the eye, what happens to the eye? It gets swollen, right? And so you create this low grade of inflammation, which is part of how the immune system works. The problem is, most of that inflammation that we're seeing in people, it's not oops, I bumped my elbow, it's gone in a day or two. It's a chronic low grade inflammation. And so you can see when we add in things like probiotics over here, right? Probiotics do a bunch of different things. They regulate the Th1, the Th2 immune cells, right? So Th1, Th2, right? That's going to be the natural killer cells on the Th1 side versus the antibodies on the other side. And so we have this balance between helper and natural killer on the one, and then we have the antibodies on the two. And so we have this good balance. And if we have it out of kilter, like let's say we have higher Th2, you may see more allergies and things like that, which can obviously stress out the lungs. And obviously, if we have some kind of an infection in the lungs, we want good Th1 modulation, because if the Th2 is really high, the Th1, those natural killer cells are going to be lower. And so you can see, obviously, it's going to express several viral defense genes. It inhibits various cytokines and chemokines. So the chance of you having, what's the expression they call it here? It's the inflammation after a virus kind of comes in and ravages the lungs.
Like a cytokine storm.
Yeah, cytokine storm. And so this really helps modulate the imbalance in cytokines after the fact, right? And obviously, it's going to modulate immunoglobulins. That's your antibodies, your IgG, IgA, IgM, IgG. And then it's going to modulate your innate and your adaptive immune system. And obviously, it's going to help with the allergenic, anti-allergenic properties. So that's going to be a Th2 stimulator. So you can see it's going to really help modulate this here. And again, this article doesn't even really address it, but if we don't have good gut absorption of, let's say, vitamin A or vitamin C or vitamin D, right? If we don't have good absorption in the gut, then obviously all those nutrients play a major role in modulating the immune system too. Any comments on that, Evan?
Yeah, well said. So I'll take it a step further. We see all sorts of dysbiosis, bacterial overgrowth, candida, parasites, worms, gut inflammation coming from the diet. You alluded to the malabsorption. So let's say you're giving someone X amount of zinc. Let's say you're giving someone X amount of quercetin and vitamin D and vitamin C, and you're thinking that you've got a good protocol. Well, we talk about this all the time. It's not really about what you eat or what you take. It's about what do you actually digest, what do you absorb, and what do you assimilate from that. So the problem is I have firsthand experience now with some really, really intense medical cases. We'll just leave it at that for now. And this particular person has been getting vitamin C in a crushed up tablet form, when in reality, we should be getting IV vitamin C. So it's not just about what you get, it's how you get it, it's how much you get it, it's about how much you get from what you're taking. And there's a lot of issues. And if you say you're getting 2 grams orally in a crushed up low quality form, we know that vitamin C in general, we see it low all the time on organic acids testing. Maybe you're getting 1/10 of that. So you're really just not going to get the therapeutic amount. So a lot of people I find are either being fairy dusted or they're fairy dusting themselves because they're putting so much hope into the products they're taking, and they're just not getting much from that due to these underlying issues with the gut. And you and I have beat the drum on the gut for freaking 10 plus years now, and we're still having to beat the drum on the gut. But I hope that you feel as good as I do about all the work we've done, because we know that everything we're doing with the gut is improving people's responses, so that if they do get exposed to something, they're going to have a much, much healthier, better response to it.
100%. I want to show one more article up here, if you don't mind. We're trying to incorporate some of these new systems here. People can kind of see what's happening with some of the articles that we're looking at while we go live. I think it should be helpful. All right, so this one thing I wanted to post here. So we're looking at different kind of infectious stress on the lungs and what's happening, but look at what's happening with probiotics, right? Probiotics are having an effect on modulating TNF alpha, interleukin 6. It's having also effects on modulating over here your CD4 cells. These are your natural helper cells. So probiotics actually have a major role in modulating this whole immune response. And so, I think one of the best things you can do if you have poor gut health out of the gates here is potentially adding in some probiotics, maybe adding in some fermented foods, as long as you are getting bloated or gassy. Now, some people that have SIBO, these things may make it worse. And so if you're one of those people, that probably won't be the best thing. But if you're trying to be more in preventative mode, we probably want to get some of this dysbiosis under control and work on building up good bacteria after the fact. Kind of my general analogy is you get your car washed before you get it waxed. You go and throw down seeds only after you've done the weeding in your lawn. Anything else you want to add there, Evan?
Yeah, except for like an acute situation. You might have to change the order of operations. You might just have to go hardcore in it. Maybe you get some bloating, some burping, some gas, some kind of reaction. You got to make a pros and a cons list, right? There's always a risk-benefit analysis, and those short-term effects from a probiotic, if it were in the wrong order per se, not going to be a huge deal long-term.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just all right, good. So I think that's really good. So first thing I wanted to add on top of that is we know gut permeability is a major stress on the immune system. because you're allowing undigested food particulate potentially, or potentially like endotoxins, which are like the outer shell of the bad bacteria, potentially even mycotoxins from fungus or mold, right? These things affect gut permeability. When the gut's more permeable, that allows more foreign antigens. Think of antigens as like foreign proteins, right? So you could put bacteria, viruses, food, all in that kind of antigen category. It exposes more things to the immune system. And the more you expose bigger chunks of things to the immune system, the more responsive the immune system will be. And so ideally, we don't want to poke the bear, right? Think of like gut permeability is poking that sleeping bear, and we don't want to overstimulate that and create immune responses unless we really need to.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy too? We've seen so many things with obesity and worse outcomes and diseases. And I went out to a restaurant yesterday. I got some delicious chicken wings, some grilled chicken wings, and I look around and everyone. This was on a Sunday. Everyone's drinking mimosas and Bloody Marys and whatever else. And the majority of the people are obese and they're getting pretzels and uh, nacho cheese. And then they get donut holes delivered to their table. And then they get a sandwich with like 6 pieces of bread and the cheese is gooing off the sandwich. And then they go and get chocolate cake afterwards. It's like, my goodness, just imagine how much better we could be if people just had chicken wings like me for lunch. I didn't have donuts. I didn't have queso. I didn't have a freaking pretzel. I didn't have a Bloody Mary. Like, come on. Like, people, it's like they don't care about their health until they are forced to care about their health. But by the time you get to that point, it's already too late. So I guess my little rant here is just, I really want people to start taking their health seriously now. Stop waiting until you're at rock bottom before you decide you want to change things. Use this information that Dr. J and I are providing and implement it now. Like, people listen, and then the implementation is just not there. I really hope people implement the stuff you and I talk about.
100%. So, I mean, out of the gate, I mean, of course, you may have caught people on a bad day. Maybe they're 90%, good, 10% off, and you caught them on their cheat day, right? But odds are that's probably not the case. But we have patients that are really good and may have a bad day every now and then. So, hey, fine. If you're doing great and you're on point and you're in great health and you want to cheat every now and then, I always recommend try to choose the least damaging cheat possible, right? That probably isn't the best example of that. But in general, food plays a major role, right? Because food's going to have the nutrients to run your immune system, right? Our fat soluble vitamins are antioxidants, zinc, magnesium, selenium, all play major roles with the immune system. Our antibodies are made from protein. So if you're not getting and digesting good protein, you're not going to be able to make good antibodies for your Th2 immune response. And then obviously, if you're eating a lot of inflammatory food, the more omega-6, the more you stimulate your prostaglandin E2, that's more the inflammatory side, the more you're going to have unprovoked immune responses, and you're just going to be chronically inflamed. And then you may have this cytokine storm thing we talk about because you don't have good balance to your immune system. And so also on top of that, right, we know how much carbohydrate, especially refined processed carbohydrate, it feeds a lot of bad bugs. So if you have a lot of fungus overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, these bugs prefer the refined processed foods, right? It's going to just be easier to digest, easier to feed them. And so you're going to create overgrowths like that. And these bad bugs obviously produce other types of toxins in your body, right? Bad bugs eat your nutrients and poop. And then versus eating your poop and producing nutrients, right? Bad bugs take the nutrients you're eating and they'll produce more toxins and endotoxins and different metabolites, lipoic acid, etc., versus producing B vitamins, producing vitamin K, producing different beneficial acids that prevent the colon from overgrowing, right? Probiotics, acidophilus literally translates to acid loving. And so good probiotics actually produce and lower the pH in the intestinal tract, which actually makes it harder for bad bugs to grow, right? Bugs tend to prefer a more alkaline type of environment to actually grow in the lower intestines.
That's a great point. I don't think many people know that about acidophilus. I'm glad you broke that down simply for people, that you actually want this lower pH environment, because that's not really a place for these pathogens to thrive, versus when you're on proton pump inhibitors, for example, right? Acid blocking medications, or if you've got an H. pylori infection, you're going to have that higher pH, you're going to have that more alkaline gut. And then that's where things really get into trouble. I mean, you and I think we've done a whole podcast on this, but the brief spark notes are lower stomach acid, age, stress, not chewing your food. That's going to increase malabsorption and feed the bugs too. So this, once again, goes back to the same thing we've said 100 times. You get your gut tested, figure out if you've got this overgrowth going on. Don't wait until you're in a critical situation. We got to get your gut fixed now. Think of working on your gut as preventative medicine. How revolutionary is that?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also when you consume too much carbohydrate, we talked about how you're going to feed the bad bugs. We talked about what the bad bugs do in regards to impeding nutrients, adding more toxins, right? Pooping poop, right? There was one more thing I wanted to kind of highlight on that realm. We talked about the gut permeability and the overstimulating the immune system. Also, high levels of carbohydrate, glucose looks very similar molecularly to vitamin C. And so you have these macrophages, these little Pac-men and Pac-women that go along in the lymphatic system and in your bloodstream. They gobble up bacteria, gobble up viruses, gobble up crud. Vitamin C kind of docks on that macrophage and kind of supercharges the macrophage so it can gobble things up more. Guess what? Glucose can actually come in there and dock on that macrophage, and it can decrease the macrophage's ability to gobble things up. Now, in the literature likes to make things confusing. So there's kind of like two sets of language. There's like the lay language, right? Where we're kind of communicating it in a way that everyone gets it. In the literature, they'll call it the phagocyte index, right? Phagocytes. So phagocyte with a pH, all right? So go on PubMed, type in phagocyte index, and you'll see that's the macrophage's ability to gobble critters and bacteria up. And so if we decrease the phagocyte index, it's going to be they're not going to be able to gobble things up as much. And so this is really important. And so high levels of glucose, high levels of insulin, which again, glucose and fructose stimulate insulin production, right? And so you're going to have less gobbling of your Pac-men and Pac-women in your bloodstream to be able to control these critters.
That's crazy. Okay, so you're saying if I'm in the hospital and the nurse or whoever brings me my lunch, which I saw when my grandmother was in the hospital a couple years ago for heart issues, you know what they brought her for lunch? It was this little like packet of peanut butter, which was corn syrup and like peanuts. And then I think it was probably a piece or two of bread. And then it was a little jelly packet. And guess what that was? Corn syrup and like fake artificial flavor and purple dye and whatever else. So you're saying that's not the optimal diet for good macrophage. I guess you would call it bug eating per se.
No, one, it's going to feed a lot of dysbiotic bacteria. Two, it's going to decrease the phagocyte index, so your body's ability to gobble up the bacteria and such. And then I would say on top of that, the more insulin resistance you have, because how it works is, right? You take in glucose, you take in fructose, right? When there's fiber attached to it, it actually decreases glucose and fructose's damage, i.e. like if I consume some fructose from blueberries, one, there's a bunch of antioxidants with the blueberries, a bunch of different quercetins and bioflavonoids and vitamin C on that. There's also fiber. So fiber kind of blunts the effects that you may get from fructose when you consume things like in form of blueberries or strawberries. But when you consume fructose without the fiber, i.e. high fructose corn syrup, right? Or table sugar, which is sucrose. Sucrose is fructose and glucose. High fructose corn syrup is just like 55-45 fructose to glucose, where table sugar is half and half, right? When you consume it without the fiber and out the nutrients, what happens is the body says, okay, we got to go store it in the liver. So the first place it goes to dump that fructose is store it in the liver. Once the fructose sources are done there, it can't store it anymore. It starts to convert it to fat. And then once the liver starts getting fatty, all this fructose just hangs around in the bloodstream and it's creating all this oxidative stress. It's like putting barbecue sauce right on your chicken before you barbecue it. It creates this browning effect. And so when you have all this high level of fructose in your bloodstream because your liver's saturated, your liver's now fatty, it can't store it anywhere else. You have high levels of insulin. Now you start browning all the arteries. And then what does that do? It creates inflammation. It makes your platelets and your blood cells just more sticky. So you have increased chances of clotting. What's going to happen when you have clotting in the lungs? It's going to create a whole bunch of lung stress, right? Obviously, heart issues, if it's in the heart, brain issues, if it's in the brain. And so if we can get the fructose and the high levels of insulin down, one, that's going to help blood flow. It's going to decrease your oxidative stress reserves. And so when you have high levels of oxidative stress, what does that do to your needs of vitamin E and vitamin A and vitamin C? It increases it. because your body's having to put out these fires, and think of these antioxidants as like the fire extinguisher. So it's wanting to use all these antioxidants. And of course, the fuel that feeds a lot of this stuff is going to be high sugar and crap that also feeds the bacteria, which then makes the immune response worse. So you can see all these things, they kind of compound on each other, one after another.
Yeah, that was a great way to put it. That's what I was kind of picturing in my head, this snowball effect against you, and it gets nasty quickly.
It does. It really gets nasty.
And then if you're really, really bad, and then you're on the feeding tube, I mean, we've seen, and I know you've talked about this before with your some of your work in the medical industry years ago. I mean, you've talked about some of this stuff they feed people. It's bad. These feeding type solutions. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's just straight garbage. I don't have an ingredient list in front of me, but I know it's not good.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, sugar is used. It hits that opiate receptor, right? It's people use it to kind of modulate pain, modulate all the bad stuff that's happening. So it's, you know, it's very addicting, you know, once you're stuck on it. We had a question come in. How do you test for some of these things with the bacterial overgrowth? So you can do a SIBO breath test, a lactulose breath test. We can do one of the different organic acid tests that will look at some of the bad bacteria metabolites like benzoate, hippurate, 2,3-phenyl acetate, indican. These are different organic acid or bile acid markers that we can look at. We'll also run good comprehensive DNA stool tests that will look at some of these bacteria and if they're overgrown, right? Some of the common bacteria we'll see are Klebsiella, Citrobacter, Prevotella, Morganella, Pseudomonas, right? These are some of the common ones that we'll see, and they will be elevated way outside the reference range when this is happening.
Yeah, you've got strep, you've got staph. We'll look at candida on the stool, even though it's not as accurate as the urine. We'll look at the parasites too. What about like blasto and crypto and giardia? What about H. pylori infections? All these things add up against you. So our goal is really try to get everything on paper and figure out what all you're up against. And the cool thing is, a lot of times you and I are knocking out infections that maybe we didn't even know were there, because we can't test for everything. Like, we have really, really good testing, but I'm sure there are still different pathogens that we don't even know. But the cool thing is with these herbs and with these synergistic formulas that we're using clinically with people is that you may have some antiviral, antifungal, antimicrobial, antiparasitic properties all to these same compounds. So you may knock out 4 different infections with the same nutrient, as opposed to, let's say, a specific drug designed to target a specific pathogen, like an anti-giardia, anti-parasitic medication. Whereas herbs, we may come in and knock out giardia plus crypto, plus the H. pylori, all in one fell swoop. So that's the benefit. And not to mention, let's say it's berberine that we're using for antimicrobial support. We may help support glucose there. We may, with some of these other herbs,
there's some of that.
We may lower inflammation at the same time as we're eradicating the infection. So that's just really the beauty. Once you get the data, the beauty is that you can work on multiple mechanisms at the same time, getting someone to the finish line faster.
Yeah, and also when you take some of these herbs are going to have antioxidants in it. So the oxidative stress that you kind of create with the killing of these microbes, these herbs are going to have some antioxidants present in them just due to their phytosignature. Obviously, when you take in an antibiotic, right, you're not going to have a lot of nutrients or antioxidants present with that. They actually can create more oxidative stress. Just go into PubMed, type in antibiotics and oxidative stress, or antibiotics and mitochondrial stress. There's a lot of studies supporting this. So the part of the benefits is with the herbs is that you're going to get some antioxidant nutritive properties because based on their phytosignature. And again, this is all going to be dependent upon these herbs being higher quality, right? Not cheap ones. And if they're grown in soils that have high levels of lead or mercury, then that could obviously be a negative impact. So we want to make sure we're sourcing out high quality herbs. That's why we want to have them professional grade, where we have third-party testing on them to make sure they're adequate. The next thing on top of that is there's synergy between some of these herbs. So for instance, you talked about berberines, right? Very helpful. Berberines also help modulate lipids, right? Triglycerides, cholesterol, right? They also help with blood sugar. And guess what? Berberines combined with wormwood are shown to actually have antiviral qualities, which is very helpful. So if you have any kind of lingering viral stress, that can also be very helpful. I see people when we do gut killing, they may start to flare their herpes because their immune system's going after it. Sometimes that can happen too, or it may be very helpful with their EBV or something else going on in their body. So we got to keep an eye on all those things.
That's cool. Yeah, that's really fascinating. Oregano too, right? We love oregano. We'll use that as a broad spectrum too. That has a lot of cool different antiviral, antimicrobial properties. Olive leaf is another great one that we use.
Yep. Olive leaf has antiviral properties too, anti-inflammatory for sure.
And it's gentle. Some of these things are just so gentle that even in young children that we're seeing with these issues. I mean, I know with you and I, I've actually had a couple clients, they've really tooted you and I's horn. They say, that you and Dr. J are kind of the only guys out there with young kids that actually are doing functional medicine, because so many people are doing like functional medicine theory, or maybe they're a clinician and they're older, maybe they don't have kids. So I wanted to pass that feedback on to you that our clients, they really love that about us, that we've got young kids, because we're implementing this stuff with our kids too. I know you and I have both done antimicrobial nutrients and other supportive stuff for our children. And it's been really great because there's so much fear, and I guess you would just call it misinformation when it comes to kids. Kids are so resilient, but they do sometimes need help. And, you'll often get the recommendation or the comment that, oh, well, the pediatrician doesn't know anything about that for the kids. I will tell you personally, herbs are great for kids, and we use protocols with kids all the time. There's so much to be done with kids.
100%. So just kind of out of here, just if we kind of re-summarize what we're trying to, make sure you guys extract from here is, number one, beneficial bacteria is going to help modulate the immune system, decrease permeability, immune permeability, or gut barrier permeability, which takes stress off the immune system. It's going to modulate the cytokines, the interleukins. So when your immune system comes in there, you're not going to create more damage from the immune system. So it's kind of like the firefighters coming in and you have a small fire, and instead of putting it out with one of those portable little fire extinguishers, they bring the whole big ladder and truck in there and spray so much water they knock down all your walls. It's kind of like, well, that's kind of an inappropriate response to that kind of fire. Same thing with your immune system. We don't want your immune system to be creating stress and inflammation because the response is inappropriate, right? We could see this with other stress infections. We see it with allergies, right? And so we want to make sure we have good immune stress. We want to make sure that your gut is healthy, where it's extracting all of the nutrients. We're putting foods in there that aren't feeding the bad bugs, but also providing lots of good, beneficial, healthy fiber and healthy full spectrum antioxidants and nutrients to help the gut and the immune system as well. Any comments on that, Evan?
Well, that just kind of spurred the thought when we could do a whole part 2 on this. But I mean, there is a role of some leaky gut support outside of probiotics during this. You and I have our own custom professional formulas that we use with various nutrients like aloe and mucin and chamomile and other things that you can use to actually support the gut lining. So this would be another great thing to implement if you're in these situations. Maybe you're unable to get testing because, it takes a couple weeks turnaround time or a little more depending on what you're doing. So if you're kind of in a more acute situation, I think not knowing what you're up against, you still could bring in some of these leaky gut supports now. And then if you're in a situation like I'm telling you to, wait before you hit rock bottom, wait before, don't wait before you hit rock bottom. Don't wait before you have to go to the hospital. Work on your gut now. If we have all the data, we can work you through these steps here. And then we may have already gotten you to the gut healing point to where you're not coming into this infection with a leaky gut. I would much rather someone come in with a healthy gut. We know they're going to do far better. And with this discussion you and I talked about today of the gut-lung axis, now's the time to focus on your gut, so you don't have to focus on your lungs.
100%. I think that's great. Makes a lot of sense. So you guys listening, if you enjoyed today's content here, we'll put a list of some of the products that we use, some of the probiotics that we specifically like and use with our patients. I'll put some of the immunonutrients that we like to kind of modulate the breathing pathways, quercetin, stinging nettle, all excellent. I love ginger tea as well. We'll put that in the links down below. Those are all excellent things. And of course, some of the herbs that we like as well. We'll put some of the clearing herbs that we like for the dysbiosis and such in the comments or in the comments description below. And if you want to support us, you can purchase some of those things there. If you also want to reach out, we're available for functional medicine consultation support all around the world. We'll put that link down below as well. evanbrand.com to reach out with Evan, Dr. J, justinhealth.com to reach out with myself. Thanks so much. Evan, any last things you want to highlight?
No, that's it. If people need help, feel free to reach out. We're here for you. We'd love to help you do an overhaul. You know what I mean? If we got to look at your system, let's look at your system. Please reach out if you need help. Dr. J at justinhealth.com. Me, Evan, evanbrand.com. We'd love to help you, and we're here for you.
Awesome. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye.